and welcome to the Warrior Moms podcast. I'm your host, Trina Rothman, and joining me tonight via the internet is my friend Rhonda Kuykendall. Rhonda, thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Rhonda is the chairperson for the Fort Bend County, Fort Bend County is here in Texas, Fort Bend County DA Human Trafficking Team. But before we get into the show, I just want to knock out a couple of announcements. One, we have Warrior Mom swag available in the Warrior Moms Community Facebook page. And if you're not already a member, just go ahead and say that in the comments that you want to go ahead and join, and we'll post a link after the show. The second announcement is that November is Epilepsy Awareness Month, and I'm working hard to bring you some really great and creative content for November. And I think we're going to have some fundraising events as well that we can raise money for local charity, epilepsy charities. But before I turn over the show, I just want to say that I'm a one-woman show. Everything that I do is on my own. So if you could help me help this community grow by liking, commenting, sharing, and creating watch parties for the show tonight, that would be incredibly helpful, and it will help us reach and help more people. So normally on our show, what we do is we talk to special needs parents where they can share usually special needs moms, where they can share their Warrior Mom's journey, how they've overcome the obstacles in their life. And then we also talk to other people who work in the special needs community, like dietitians, or in the future we have a person who is creating adaptive toys. So there's things that we really try to do, but who I am and where I got my start was with blogging in Unsocially Acceptable, which is the host of the Warrior Moms podcast. So Unsocially Acceptable tackles the hard things. We talk about the things in life that don't fit into a social media filter. You can't put a pretty filter on the hard things in life. They are what they are, and you have to talk about them. You have to acknowledge them, because if you don't, it takes power away from you and gives it more power. It makes it unstoppable. And so one of the things that's really hit hard lately, and a really huge topic of conversation that I've seen on social media, is human trafficking. And so I felt that it was necessary, after speaking with Tanya Moon, who's a former guest on the show, speaking with Tanya Moon about how trafficking has affected the Fort Bend County area, the Houston area, the state of Texas, the United States, the world at large. And I wanted to come on here and really talk and separate fact from fiction. And Tanya pointed me to Rhonda. And since then, Rhonda has really opened my eyes to what is going on in the Fort Bend area. She's made me quite aware of a lot of different things, but I feel that it's more important to hear from Rhonda than it is to hear from me. And so that is why we're doing a 2-part episode. Rhonda has agreed to her time and everything. So we're doing a 2-part episode to really talk about trafficking. That all being said, I'm going to turn the show over to Rhonda. Why don't you tell us, just so everyone can get an idea of who you are, how you got involved as the chairperson for Fort Bend County DA Human Trafficking Team.
Sure. I got involved because I'm a survivor first. I was involved in a child pornography ring when I was 10 years old. Throughout my childhood, I was victimized by, I actually couldn't even tell you how many men. But the worst of the worst was Mark Phillip Turner. And I decided to look for Mark Phillip Turner when my daughter became about the age I was when I was abused. And I found out very quickly that I had passed a statute of limitations. And so for those of you that don't know, if you have a penal code charge in Texas, you have a statute of limitations of when you can press those charges. And so at the time, it was 10 years after your 18th birthday. And so I was older than 28, so therefore I could not come forward and press charges. So what I did is I bought a Lobbying 101 book, read it cover to cover, and went into Austin. It took 5 years, over 2 legislative sessions, and we passed the bill in 2007. We abolished the statute of limitations against child sexual assault. At the same time I was working on this, I was dealing with my predator. We found him. He had been convicted 4 times, 3 different states, all sex crimes against children, and he was scheduled for release. So I prepared myself for him to be released. He was released in 2015. He was released first in 2006, and he sent me a threatening email because of the work I was doing in Austin. And because he sent the threatening email, it was misuse of the internet. He went back to prison. He spent 10 years in prison. During those 10 years, though, I had to fight his release every single year with the parole board. Today, he is out walking free. TDCJ has told me to implement safety measures within my own home life since he's already threatened me once. And that's what brought me to the DA's office, to talk to the DA about what I needed to do. And as soon as I was talking to Mr. Middleton, who is our Fort Bend County District Attorney, he told me he would love to have me on the human trafficking team. And that's how I ended up.
Oh, wow. And I mean, and you're doing great things. So how long have you been with the human trafficking team?
I was the last person to be added onto the team. So I have been with the human trafficking team for 6 months, but I also serve as a board member for Child Advocates of Fort Bend. And I have been involved with that organization. That organization deals with kids that are sexually abused and kids that are removed from their homes and put into foster care. I've been with Child Advocates of Fort Bend for 5 years.
Okay. So little known fact about me, when I actually got out of college, I had to do an internship with CPS in the Parental Rights Termination Division. And I remember when I was walking through getting a tour of the facility, they were like, oh, in this wing is where we keep our therapists, because inevitably you're going to end up with PTSD for some of the things that you're going to see. And they said most people who are doing what I do only lasted 2 years. The average term of employment was 2 years, because you see some truly, truly horrific stuff. I only lasted 3 months because I couldn't stop crying. And yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, but I was seeing more family on family abuse. I never even really thought to equate it with trafficking type situations. But yeah, it's terrible. So what you're doing really, it's amazing work, because not everybody can do it. And so those who are out there doing it, my hats are off to you. So let me ask you, so everybody is hearing things about, what is the hashtag save the children, which seems to be, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of others, it's become political and almost like a social media stunt. And I feel like it maybe takes away, but this is my personal opinion, not yours. My personal opinion is I feel like it takes away from the true message. So something that I want to discuss is, I mean, I think what people are thinking is like hashtag save the children is just this conspiracy theory that everyone is working against everybody to just sell children around the world. But there's no real thought and logic behind it. There's no real explanation of why you're saying hashtag save the children, or why you think that this conspiracy theory exists. So what does human trafficking really look like in the Fort Bend, Houston area?
So just to touch on Save the Children just a little bit, this issue is nonpartisan. Whether you are red, blue, purple, it doesn't matter. We all care about our kids. The problem that I have seen with Save the Children is that we don't see with the nonprofits that we work with what they are saying. And so it takes the focus away from the real work, because everybody's focusing on this conspiracy theory when there are real victims out there, there are real issues out there that need to be addressed. And later on in the presentation, I'll share with you some great local nonprofits that are doing things in our area every day right here in Fort Bend County. And so I want to just get started by sharing with you the legal definition of what sex trafficking is. And it is recruiting, harboring, transporting, providing, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of an individual through force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of commercial sex. If the victim in this case is under 18 years of age, that force, fraud, and coercion goes away. It doesn't matter. The terminology child prostitution is not accurate. It's child abuse. It's child sexual abuse. A child cannot consent to sex with an adult. And so anytime you're talking about sex trafficking in the greater Houston area, and Fort Bend County is the greater Houston area, you have to really be careful when you're talking about statistics, because they're very fluid. They are a snapshot in time. And all of this activity is extremely underreported. So when I give you all these numbers, I want you to kind of keep that in mind. We think about sex trafficking and we automatically think of females, but females make up 60% of victims, 36% are male. And that remainder percentage is actually transgender females and males. So we should not only focus all of our attention on the females. Another myth that people believe is that sex trafficking involves being kidnapped, like the movie Taken. We think that people are brought over from Asia to work in the massage parlors or Mexico to work in the cantinas, when in reality, 83% of victims are U.S. citizens. And so Texas is number 2 in the reported cases of minor sex trafficking. It is here. And by all those statistics, I just want everybody to know that it is in big cities, it is in small cities, it is in rich communities, it is in poor communities, it is across the United States. And you just kind of have to, one example is here locally, an international sex ring was found in Cross Creek Ranch in Fulshire. So it was here, and it was in one of the most affluent sections of Cross Creek Ranch. And so when you look at who is at risk for being victimized, 60% of kids that are victimized in sex trafficking come from the child welfare system. That is a large percentage, but we also have to look at the 40%. So the average age of going into the game or into the life is between 13 to 15 years old. These kids have a history of prior sexual abuse. They are from foster care, they are runaways, or special needs kids. And special needs kids are grouped in with this at risk because they tend to be very, very naive or very understanding, and it's easier to manipulate these kids that are special needs. And so you look at the 40% and you look at today with the proliferation of social media, a perpetrator could actually groom a child on social media with never having seen them face to face. As we are all stuck in a pandemic and parents are having to focus in on their work, kids are at an increase for being online for longer with a higher, greater risk of grooming. So when you look at Fort Bend County, Fort Bend County butts up against Houston. And there is a lot of sex trafficking in Houston, but perpetrators don't see the lines when they're going from Fort Bend to Houston. A lot of our kids are groomed in Fort Bend. They're taken across the line, and the crimes occur in Houston, but it's still a Fort Bend problem. And so I wanted to kind of give you an overview of what does sex trafficking look like in the Houston area. So there's a term called IMB. It stands for illicit massage business. And usually there are women victims of Asian descent in the IMBs. There are cantinas, which are women of the Mexican descent, mainly in Latinas. Then you have strip clubs. Strip clubs are a huge sex trafficking hub. You have sex trafficking that occurs in hotels and motels, in homes, just like I mentioned above. And then when you think about prostitution and sex trafficking, everybody thinks about the street prostitution. Houston has that with the track in the Bissonnet area. What does Fort Bend County have? So we don't have strip clubs, and we don't have the track, and we don't have cantinas, but we have everything else. It is here. It has been going on. July of 2019, we had a sting here in Fort Bend County. It was organized by HATRA, and that is Human Trafficking Rescue Alliance. HATRA is a group of law enforcement, a group of nonprofits that all come together and they work together and they do these stings. This sting in Fort Bend County, they arrested 64 perpetrators and rescued 7 people. So if you try to say it's not here, it's here. And so what I have seen, if you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it. These women do not self-report. They don't see themselves as a victim. It takes a lot of trauma-informed care, a lot of therapy for them to be able to understand that they were coerced, that they are a victim, that they are strong enough to be able to come to court and testify against the perpetrator. We have a really big issue here in Fort Bend County of law enforcement needs to be trained. I can give you an example. I took a human trafficking case to a local police department here in Fort Bend County, and I gave them all of the details that had been handed over to me, and they reported back to me and said, we're not going to do anything. This is just prostitution. The victim had been approached by somebody in school. She was 17 years old, and she was selling her body to men that this classmate of hers had found. that's just a misunderstanding of the law. She is under 18. It is sex trafficking, and they said they weren't going to do anything with it. So I had to go to the district attorney's office, and that's kind of part of my job, is to be the eyes and ears out in Fort Bend County and report problems that are going on. And so I went to our DA and I gave him the same information, and they acted on it. So this same police department, as he was trying to treat me like he was educating me, he said, I came from the military, and in the military, when women cry rape, it's not rape. It's just they got lonely and they feel guilty. And so with that, I'm saying we need training. We need them to have the eyes and the ears. And that's one thing that Judge KP George is doing. He has a separate human trafficking team in Fort Bend County. Their main focus is to educate all county offices of what sex trafficking looks like, what sex trafficking victims look like, and how to look out for it. Another thing that a law enforcement office said was they had arrested 2 Asian women in an illicit massage business, and they said, this is just prostitution. This is not sex trafficking. So when you look at the difference between prostitution and sex trafficking, there is such a very, 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 very small minority of women that are choosing to sell their bodies, choose who they're going to sell to, stop if they don't want to have sex with this person, and they keep all the money. That is not happening out there. It is pimps that are using, not a whole lot of force, but fraud and coercion to keep these women selling their bodies and giving the money over to them. And so what we have to look at is we have to look at public policy to help victims that address the 98 or 99% of the cases, and not a very small minority of women that are choosing to do this and picking their clients. So that was a lot.
That was a lot. To hear, oh gosh, I feel like there's an echo. To hear that there is the special needs community is being is susceptible to trafficking and to coercion and things like that. That just breaks my heart, because I think of my sweet girl, and I know that she's trusting. I know that she, I try really hard. I try really hard to make sure that she understands stranger danger. But, I know that some of these people that are helping these, or I guess helping get these children out there are, school friends. Like you said, that one girl who was 17 and her school friend was out there. So it's like, how do you protect them from people you don't even know, or like people at school to even do this? So it just blows my mind. And then just to hear the thing about the girl in the cop saying the thing in the military, that's just, regret. No, that makes my blood boil, because that's just insensitive. My husband is former military as well. And so we have these conversations too, because I actually have a friend who produced a show or produced a movie, a documentary about women in the service. And there's being one of the women in the show said her story, and she was raped by a up-and-coming soldier, and she got pregnant, and they were like, why are you trying to ruin his career? And she's like, wait, what? He raped me. I'm pregnant. I'm just trying to figure out what to do with life. I'm an up-and-coming soldier. What about my career? And so, this I'll have to share it with you, but this documentary was very impactful as far as like how women are treated in the military. And it's basically saying, hey, we're veterans too, because when you think about veterans, you only really associate veterans with men. Right. And so yeah, it's a really, really powerful story. But so going on into the human trafficking thing, what are signs of grooming? What do we hear about? Because we hear a lot about grooming. What is grooming? What are the signs of it?
So you would think it's kind of odd, but you would think that almost like perpetrators have or traffickers have like a black book, because they do have a signature way of dealing with victims. The first thing that you're going to find is that they're going to work to befriend them. It's going to be a classmate. It's going to be the parent of a friend of theirs. It's going to be somebody that they trust and they begin to be friends with. As soon as they get past that friendship stage, the first thing they do is try to bring in intoxicants. Do you smoke? Do you drink? And immediately they bring in the drinking and the smoking. And then after that, you're going to find they work really, really hard to alienate them from their families. You know, your mom is so square. The world's not like that anymore. Everybody's like us. You just need to have fun. Then what the next step is going to be, it's going to be isolating them from their old friends. Their old friends are not part of this new friend group. You'll see kids starting to no longer participate in the sports that they were participating in. They have a new set of friends, and it's not the ones that they've had their entire lives growing up. So once you get to that phase, the next step is what's called to desensitize. So you've now got them, you've been working with them, and I want you to know that this process does not happen in a week. It could take a year. They put a lot of effort into all of the steps of grooming. And so they desensitize them by introducing them to, hey, here's my friend who strips and does tricks in the back of the strip club. And, you know, look, she's fun, and, you know, I'm fun, she's fun, so that you begin to let their moral guard down, that what they've had their entire lives. Once you get through all of those steps, that's when they capitalize. They capitalize on everything that they've been working on. And what you have to understand is today, human trafficking in the United States is the number 2 illegal activity, just below drugs. The statistics state that it's probably going to be overtaking drugs. And the reason why is because when somebody is selling a bag of weed, they've lost their product. When you are selling a person, you are going to sell that same person over and over and over and over again. There's also stiffer penalties on drugs than there is on selling a person today. That's one thing that we're going to be working on in Texas, and I will share that with y'all next week. And so it is a very planned out process. I know of another case that happened in Katy where it was a close friend of the girl, and it ended up this boy was paid $500 to turn her over to traffickers that she had never met. So he did all of the steps, and then just one night handed her over.
For $500.
For $500.
Oh, good Lord. So for those of you joining in the show, we're talking to Rhonda Kuykendall. She's the chairperson for Fort Bend County DA Human Trafficking, or the Human Trafficking team. She's on here to dispel the myths and rumors, just create fact from fiction. That's really what it is, fact from fiction. She's here to help us understand what human trafficking actually looks like in Fort Bend County and the greater Houston area. And she's here to just educate us on how we can be more mindful and aware of what's happening in our area, such as the grooming and what we can look for, you know, children who are disassociating from their former lives. So we are a live and interactive show. If you have questions for Rhonda, please go ahead and if you're watching on any of my platforms, you can ask questions. We can see them and bring them on screen. So if you have any questions you would like Rhonda to answer, please just go ahead and put them in the comments and we'll bring them up as time allows. So moving forward, we just talked about signs of grooming. So once a girl is in, we're told, like you've hinted at it, you know, they're sold for sex acts, they're given drugs, they're given intoxicants. How are these girls typically, girls, guys, special needs children, how are these people, these humans, how are they rescued?
And before we get into how they are rescued, I do want to kind of cover what are the signs that a girl is being trafficked, especially if you're looking at and considering you're looking at your own child or you're concerned. You know, what you want to look for is they have a change of friends. They aren't interested in the sports they were involved in. There's a change in school attendance. Now, I know this can be difficult because a lot of this is what teenage years. Teenage years are rough. They're rough on all of us, both parents and kids. But what you're looking for is the child, there's a change. You see them wearing sexually provocative clothing. You notice that they have multiple phones. If they have burner phones, that's a telltale sign. Or you come across multiple Facebook accounts. And so if you do have a concern, start doing a little bit of research on your own. If they show up with a bunch of very expensive luxury items, you know, Louis Vuitton or, you know, iPhones. So there are ways to look for the telltale signs and to take action and do your own research. I have 2 children myself. My kids are 22 and 23. I know that they very much respected their privacy, but I think that we give them too much privacy. We need to know what they're engaged in, and we need to know what they're doing on their phones.
Absolutely.
So when you ask the question, like how do victims get out of the life? How do they, you know, stop? You have to remember that one of the first things that happens to them is the introduction of drugs, and drugs stay prominent in their life the entire time that this is going on. The average age is about 7 years, and there are several different ways for them to get out. There are stings, but stings are few and far between, right? And so sometimes the pimp just gets tired of them. They're no longer performing, they let them go. And so we have also wonderful nonprofits that they go into IMBs are harder to get into because they regulate them at the door, but they go into the cantinas, they go into the strip clubs, and they give these girls toiletry items, things that they need. And in there will be verbiage to, call this number if you want to get out. And so all of those are going on and on and on and on. And so immediately girls are going to be arrested for drugs. They're going to be arrested for prostitution. And here is the travesty of all of it is once these kids and adults too, but once they get out of the life, the opportunity for restorative care is so slim, and we need so much work in this area. And let me explain to you. So if a victim comes out of the life and they have very low level aftercare, right, very short term, there is a 34% chance that they're going to return to sex trafficking. They're going to go right back to what they knew. But if there's high level, long term, trauma informed care, that statistic goes all the way down to 5 to 7%. And so when you look at not only Texas, but across the entire United States, right now, we have 600 beds available. Some of those beds are facilities for only females. So you can imagine the problems that we would have if you were a male victim of this. The refuge is in Austin, and it has 48 beds. That facility is the largest facility in the United States with 48 beds. So we definitely need to. Elijah Rising also has what's called Restoration Farms. They're located here in Fort Bend County, and they're just now bringing in more girls for restorative care. So there's not a lot out there. There's not a lot out there to help them. We have a long way to go to help victims for restorative care.
Wow. Okay. Well, wow. The statistic of 1 in 3 going back into the life after they get out. And, I can imagine that the entire time that they've been in it, they didn't want to be in it. And here they are reverting back to old habits. So that actually just breaks my heart. So we just talked about life after rescue, reintegration into society. So you're saying that 1 in 3 people will go back. And then, okay, so.
And sometimes it actually takes them a few times leaving before they leave for good. You have to understand that. That's why I keep saying, if you're not looking for sex trafficking, you're not going to find it, because These girls will not classify themselves as a victim. They're not a victim. They chose this life. This is what they want to do. They are already leery of police because that's what they've been trained to do. The police are the bad guys. So it takes a long time for a victim to even be able to go to court against her perpetrator.
I can imagine. If you've been brainwashed and you've been led to believe that this is the way the world is, it's very hard to be told that the world is different. If I grew up my whole life thinking the sky was blue, thinking the sky was green, and then you are telling me, no, that's blue, it's going to be hard to reconcile. And that's just something simple. So we do have a question. I'm going to bring it up onto the screen. It says, since you are in Texas, how much trouble do you have with pimps or other facilitators taking their victims across the border? Do you have to involve international sting efforts to assist with rescues?
So I've never had this question where it's the opposite, where I don't see that. I don't see our girls being taken across the border. It all stays here. If somebody is trafficked out of, like Katie, they go to Houston. They may move around. You may move to Houston, to Beaumont, to, all of the neighboring cities. But I have not heard of, I'm sure it happens. That's the thing with sex trafficking. You can give all of these stories and all of these statistics, but there's always going to be exceptions to the rule, and just anything is out there. But in fact, I'm not even sure how much Mexico in particular, how much they work on sex trafficking within their own communities.
I can see that. I can understand that. So One of the big things I heard, and maybe this is true or not, but when the Super Bowl was in town,
Yes.
we had a huge sex trafficking thing going on. And is that true? Did that happen?
It is true. That's another thing that's called the game. So in sex trafficking lingo, the game is called the life. You know, it's the prostitution and everything that's involved with sex trafficking. But also the game is a Super Bowl. In every single community that the Super Bowl shows up, there is an increase in sex trafficking around it. That is very, very true. Every nonprofit in the area always steps up to try to work harder during those times to help victims around the Super Bowl.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, because I had just saw something about that. I don't know, I was reading the news or something and I saw something about it. I was like, is this true? So again, doing my research for the show. Yeah.
See, when we're talking also about why victims don't come forward, why victims don't talk, I can tell you from personal experience, I was 29 years old when I came forward. My abuse happened when I was 10. It wasn't only me, it was me and my sisters. In those years, I want you to think about this. My sister was 17 months older than me. We never spoke about what happened to us. I didn't tell her. She didn't tell me. Not for 29 years. And before I went to the police, we sat down for the first time. And each of us, there were 3 girls, each of us told each other what happened. So why you don't tell is because if you live in a normalized family, and I don't even know what normalized family means anymore. I mean, they're rare and rare, but we came from extreme dysfunction, but to us, that was normal. We didn't know any other way. I actually got married when I was 16, and I determined that I was going to break a cycle. I didn't use that terminology. I didn't know it. But I bought a book, Mrs. Manners, Manners for the 21st Century, and I began to read it just to learn how to set a table, what to wear in different seasons, things that you don't even think about, because this is what parents are supposed to be teaching you, right? So we don't have any of those safeguards in our life, and we're starting out from scratch. So when a victim doesn't come forward, it's for so many reasons that I wish that there was a way to get people to understand why victims don't talk.
No, I get it. I get it. You know, I've dealt with a lot in my past careers. I've had to work with addicts, and so even still, like addicts, they like, and I'm not saying that people in human trafficking are addicts, but it's still like they're comfortable in what they know. It's almost a sad thing that, you know, like, hey, I don't want to give up my opioids because I don't know what life is without my opioids.
Right.
And so I can see that being a very similar thought process, because I mean, addicts are an abusive lifestyle as well, whether or not they're being abused by themselves or they're the people they're getting their drugs from or things like that. It's just, once you are in a bad state of mind, it's really hard to see the bright side of things. And it's hard to say, hey, I have a problem, or, hey, this is my life and I don't want it to be my life anymore. You know, and there's a level of shame too.
Yeah. Well, and that's also given to you by the perpetrators, because the tactics that they use, you know, I mean, I remember I was probably and this sounds so sad when I say it out loud, but I was in my mid-30s before I actually realized that there are more good people in the world than bad people. And that was hard for me for many, many years, because you just feel that there are such tragedy and such awful things that have happened to you. But then it was almost like a weight was lifted off of me. It was refreshing to say, no, for every bad thing that's happening in the world, there are so many good people trying to rectify it, trying to work with it, trying to help. And you have to focus in on the good in life, and you have to be proactive and find some way to make a difference, because the experience that I had, if I did nothing with it, then what was it for? You know, I mean.
Oh no, I absolutely agree with that. And then that's part of how Unsocially Acceptable came up. I was walking through these hard seasons of life, and I knew that my problems were not unique. I knew that there are people out there who were having the same type of issues and depression and struggles that I had. And I know that I had 2 choices. I could wallow in my depression, wallow in how I felt, or I could show somebody else, hey, I know that you have similar problems. I've walked this path, and this is how I came out of it. This is what I found on the other side of it. And I've documented this for you, so you can use this as your manual. You can use this as your guide to get out. And so I love people who take their pain and their hard times and their bad experiences, and they find the silver lining. They find the positive note, and they use that to help other people. And that's how Unsocially Acceptable first came about. And so what you're doing here is amazing. And I mean, I could talk to you, and I said this to you when I talked to you on the phone that day. I could talk to you for hours about this because it blows my mind. And I know we're probably blowing other people's minds right now too, because I just, that 1 in 3 is just sitting in my brain. I'm just like, how can you get it to be a different type of number? How can you get it to be 1 in 4 or 1 in 5?
Well, and again, a lot of that has to do with funding. And sadly, in the middle of this pandemic, that's what's all being cut. And so all of this is going to have to take a back seat in order for us to get over this pandemic, because everybody, in the Texas legislature, they're looking at cutting across the board 5%. That isn't increasing. That isn't funding more things. It's trying to keep level with what we're already doing. And so all of this, all of it it's tough, but if this is the way I've always looked at it, if you look at a problem out in the world and you focus in on the full problem, it's very depressing and you don't want to do anything. But if you look at that problem and you pick one piece of it out and you start working on that one problem, if we all collectively do that together, then we make a difference. But if you just sit and just whine about how bad it is, then nothing's ever going to change. My kids will tell you, I have it all around my office. It is a favorite quote by Helen Keller. And it is, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. And that is so very true about all the work with all of the great nonprofits. All of them have their piece in making a difference in Fort Bend County and in Houston. Right before the pandemic hit, Elijah Rising had just started their van tours in Fort Bend County. I was able to be on the one and only. It's like they started them out here, we did the one, and then the pandemic shut it all down. But when you go on that Elijah Rising van tour, these are educated people. They work every single day with victims that have left the life, and they take you around to massage businesses and cantinas, and they describe the stories that went on in there. They also have a museum of modern day slavery. These are all things that were brought out of sex trafficking in the Houston area. And you will learn about abolitionists that walked with Napoleon, people that we've never even heard of, we've never studied in history. But there's been people fighting sex trafficking for a very long time. We've just got eyes on it now, and we have awareness on it. But this has been going around for a very long time. And I did mention Elijah Rising, but there's also a wonderful nonprofit. If anybody is looking to look to support anybody, it's Love People Not Pixels. This is an organization that was created to fight the demand side and work on educating people about the effects of prostitution on men in general. And now today, Love People Not Pixels, they do a lot more than just the prostitution piece. And so look them up online. They are great. I've mentioned Elijah Rising a couple times, but also one other one is Unbound Houston. Unbound Houston has been a great asset when it comes to education. And every day I'm learning about different and new nonprofit organizations and doing different work. You try to collectively get all together and not constantly overlap each other. And that's kind of, next week, we're going to be talking more about steps on how you can kind of prepare yourself, keep your child safe. But we're also going to talk about what the human trafficking team is doing in Fort Bend County with the DA's office. And, I saw all of these groups that are working on education or outreach or, helping victims right on. And one thing that I noticed is that there wasn't anybody really working on public policy. So that's what we are doing in Fort Bend County. And it kind of goes back to my wheelbase from working in Austin many years ago. And then we do have work. We have legislative work at the state level also that I can share with y'all that we're working on. We need the community's help. We need your support. And there are specific things you can do to help.
Well, that's good. That leads us into Tracy's comment. Rhonda, God bless you. Thank you for stepping up and using your voice. How do we help? So there we go. There's so many great ways. I would, when Elijah Rising, and it's Elijah like Elijah.
Yes.
Okay.
And then
So
ride.
when they do their van tours, I would be very interested in going on that whenever that's reinstituted, because actually I work in outside sales in my day job. And so I'm all over the Houston area, and I have been at a stoplight and had people knock on my window, and they weren't asking for, a cigarette or a bottle of water. They were propositioning me, and I was on Bissonnet. And so um it's just, but I never really knew. And I thank you for opening my eyes to all of this, and Tanya as well, because when the special needs thing broke my heart, like it did. And I think about my child and my friends' children, and it is definitely something that whatever I can use my platform for, I would love to raise awareness, because these children are so wonderful. Every child is wonderful. But my heart is my passion lies with the special needs community, and to know that my daughter's life is hard. Like it is a hard life, to sit there and have seizures, and to not understand emotions and things. It's a hard life for her. And then to have her have this extra little bit of like predator out there looking for someone like her. And my kid's beautiful. And it makes me a warrior heart, really just ready to go.
And I know on the banner you have the national hotline number. And so if you see something, say something. Okay. It doesn't have to be you have to see money exchanged. If you have no idea what reporting something could lead to. And I know today we've talked for like 30 minutes, and that's not a whole lot of time to go into, but I did want to give a resource. And maybe when we post the link, you can put that resource in the description. But it's a resource of materials to study to understand sex trafficking in the Houston area. And it is the refugeaustin.org/recommended-reading. When you go to this link, what you're going to find is you're going to find 5 icons. And the first icon is the exploited. When you choose that icon, that is a 6-part series that's going to take you into what it is like for a male victim, what it means to be groomed. It is very, very detailed. It is very well done. That's just on the one link. There are 5 others. I would highly recommend, if you are interested in getting involved, in all of these nonprofits can use help. If you want to work, there is a place for you. And the first thing is to be educated. And this is a great opportunity. The Refuge Austin that I'm telling you on their recommended reading, the Refuge Austin is the 48-bed long-term restorative care place. And so that's their recommended reading. And it's video based also. I think there's some newspaper articles, but it's mainly video. And so that's where we can all get started to cover more in depth.
Okay, wow. So yes, I will be sure to post all of these links. I've wrote down Elijah Rising, Unbound Houston, Love People, Not Pixels, Refuge Austin. All of those links will be available for everyone to click in and read through and educate themselves. And maybe, there's 4 different, there's 4 different nonprofits that we're going to link to right now. And I know from my experience with nonprofits, everybody has a different passion within the same type of, within the nonprofit area that they're trying to work in. I don't know the phrase of that. And so, if Elijah Rising is not for you, please click Unbound Houston. Please click all of these different ones and see what speaks to your heart. So that way, if there's a nonprofit that doesn't quite align with what you want to do, there's probably another one out there that does. And so, so that's something that I've definitely learned when working with epilepsy. Like one talks about SUDAP and one talks about monitoring units. And so like, I don't want to volunteer monitoring units. That's technology and it goes above my brain. But SUDAP is a real thing that I would like to discuss. And so I tend to gravitate towards that. But I just knocked my microphone over. I was so animated. So all these different resources are out there. And if there's more that you would like me to post beyond these 4, just send them to me and I'll keep posting them so that way people can reference them. And next week we are talking about a few different things to really dive deeper in, like you said, the legislature of what you guys are working on in Fort Bend County. Do you want to go ahead and talk about that?
So it's kind of in depth. So I'll save it for next week mainly because we're going to be talking about IMBs, and then we're going to talk about 5 or 6 legislative priorities that we have going forward at the state legislature. And there is a whole Facebook group and all for us to connect next week. But also, how do you keep your kids safe? What do you need to do? What are some resources that we can give you for that? So we have all of that going on next week.
Absolutely.
And love people, not pixels. That's who's helping us with our local work that we're doing in Fort Bend.
Local.
Joe Madison is amazing to work with. So, and we're hitting every single city in Fort Bend County. So everybody out there, there's something for you to do. So it'll be good. It'll be good.
That's awesome. And I did not know that thing about Cross Creek Ranch. That is 5 minutes from my house.
Me too.
Yeah, it is. 5 minutes from my house. Like, I know that there's always been I don't know, this one lady in Pecan Grove, she constantly gets busted, and it's been that way since I was a kid. There's a house in Pecan Grove. I think she rents, and then she rents another house in Pecan Grove, and then she gets busted. And so I always knew about that lady. But I did not know.
Well, in Cross Creek Ranch, the way that this house stood out was because they have rules with their HOA that they can't, like on all the gates that open in the driveways and stuff, or driveways that close, you can't cover it. It has to be open. Well, at this particular house, there was fake greenery, shrubbery all on that fence. So when a car drove into the driveway, when that gate closed, anybody that got out of that car, you couldn't see them. And so and it was a police officer just noticed it. And that's how it was found out.
That's fantastic, because, that's the see something, say something, and report it. And think about that officer was suspicious and he helped people, just because he was being aware of his surroundings. I love that. So, it
takes all of our law enforcement also to fight this. And HATRA has done an amazing job. And we have great resources here in Fort Bend County that we're working on. So it is moving.
That's good. That is good. And we're going to do whatever we can. And I know we've got people that are interested. So I think that's going to be our show for tonight. We've been here. We've got so much more to talk about. I mean, we've got a whole nother hour next week that we're going to tackle on this, and we can talk for hours and hours about this because there's so much to learn. There's so many intricacies, like where you were saying, just the verbiage that you use. You don't say child prostitute. That's child abuse. And I had a friend, the same friend who did the documentary. She was saying stuff like that. You have to watch the language, because the language gives it credence. It gives it it validates it, because when you start saying child prostitute, it normalizes it.
Yes, very much so.
And it's
I'm surprised nobody asked about cuties.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, cuties. That I saw a satire on that yesterday that was posted by Babylon Bee, and it was called Killing Puppies. And I felt that Killing Puppies explained the satire in a satirical way, explained exactly what everyone is trying to fight against. Because you can definitely, Terry is asking, what is Cuties? So Terry, Cuties is a Netflix produced show. I think a French director filmed a show in France, or movie in France, that she said that she was inspired by seeing girls having been sexualized in modern culture. And so she wanted to shed a light on that sexualization, except that I think her execution of that failed. Instead, she basically produced a show that is more pedophilia than awareness. And so,
you don't teach the atrocities of children being sexually exploited by sexually exploiting children. And that's exactly what happened in that film. And somebody asked me, how can you speak out about it if you haven't seen it? I did watch it. I'd watched it up to the point that I could no longer watch it. It really was hard for me to see that. And it's sensational. And that's the same thing with Save the Children. It's sensational. People like to gravitate toward it. But we don't sexually exploit. You need to think about the kids that were in that film. Yes, their parents agreed. Yes, it was taped. But there are girls that are 10 years old twerking for adult men. That is not something we should accept and normalize. And by watching it, it is normalizing it. Not only that, but every pedophile with a Netflix account can watch it over and over and over and over. That should be chilling enough.
Mm-hmm. And they are. And Netflix defends it. And, it's, and then the Killing Puppies, which is the satirical thing. The Killing Puppies basically it's allegory saying that, yes, Terry says that is sick. And I agree with you, Terry. And I know Rhonda does too. But the allegory behind Killing Puppies is that you don't need to create a movie of killing puppies to raise awareness and to tell people that killing puppies is bad. You don't need to make a movie about how sexualizing little girls is bad while sexualizing little girls. And
exactly. There are better ways to do it. And
absolutely.
The link that I gave y'all on the exploited right there, that's going to show you. You do it more documentary style. You don't do this Netflix movie of the week. It's not needed. So
no, it's not. And I'm one of those people who can't watch like horror movies where there's like lots of blood and guts, or like where somebody's like punching somebody in the face and you could just see like their face caving in. I can't watch that. I can't handle that. And I always say you can achieve the same story without showing that. And that's exactly what could have happened for Cuties. You could have achieved the same story without sexualizing those girls, without making them do the things that they had to do. And so, no, we should have talked about Cuties. I didn't even think about that, because we did.
Well, and you and I are both professional photographers, and there's also sexualizing girls and little girls in photography. And as a photographer, when you're a professional photographer, there's a line that you need to draw on what you won't shoot. And you will be surprised. There are well-known professional photographers out there that sexualize children, even setting up like a prostitution photo shoot. It's out there. It's out there.
I saw a photographer who did something very similar to that just last week, and I was disgusted. Beautiful photography, beautiful work as far as execution and everything went, but the subject matter was atrocious. And I've actually, as a photographer, I've been a photographer since 2012. I have had to say, I will not do that. And I've had to say that multiple times. And so I'm sorry, I draw the line, and I have an image and a brand to uphold as well. And that does not fall in line with who I am. And that's having integrity.
Right.
Because some people are like, money is money. No, integrity is where it's at for me.
Very true. Very well said.
So I appreciate you coming on. I say this, you blow my mind, because there's just so much in this world. There's so much, but you said it yourself. You said that there's not as many bad people as you thought. And I think for every bad person, you have 100 good people. And so I know that in this situation, good will win eventually. We just have, like, we already know the game. We already know how they groom the people. We just have to be able to get legislature up with us and on our side. And, the fact that, a drug offense is not it holds more weight than a sexual offense. And we need to change the stigma behind a woman reporting sexual harassment and rape, not victimizing the victim.
Exactly.
Or praising the hero, or praising the rapist, which is another thing that's going on right now. And so I appreciate you coming on. We've got you on next week. We're going to tackle even more stuff next week. We are raising awareness for human trafficking. The human trafficking hotline has been running this whole time, but we're just going to say it for recording purposes. The National Human Trafficking Hotline is 1-888-373-7888.
That's right. Nope, you were right.
I said right away with those eights. So everybody, I wish you all a wonderful Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We will see you next Wednesday. If you are not already a member of the Warrior Moms community on Facebook, please go ahead and join us. We will post a link in just a few minutes. If you have any questions, or if you have any comments on a future show, or if there's something that you want to ask Rhonda in the meantime, please go ahead and do that. She is available to answer your questions. And we will see you next week for part 2 of our human trafficking episode. Thank you guys, everyone. Have a wonderful Wednesday evening.